the sea. You became the light on the dark side of me. Love remains a drug that's high enough here. Did you know that when it's snow, my eyes become larger? The light that you shine can't be seen.
Rose again, right? Kiss from a rose. Why are flowers so ingrained in our culture? What is it about flowers? Well, this is where we ended last time, talking about plants and how they perform life functions. So we're going to be on page 102 to talk about how plants grow. And so when we look at this animation here, you see a young juvenile plant and it's growing. And it's kind of showing you that the plant is growing on an angle, that the roots are growing in a certain direction. How does a plant know how to grow?
So plants have to use hormones, just like we do, to regulate their growth and their response to the environment. Plants are going to make 3 specifically shaped hormones, because hormones are proteins and they're specifically shaped, to control that growth. The first hormone is ethylene, and it's a gas that actually helps the plant ripen its fruit.
Yeah, it's actually why the saying, one bad apple spoils the bunch. It turns out that this gas can help ripen other fruits. So when you see a fruit that is really ripe, if you put it next to unripe fruits, they'll actually all ripen faster. And it's because of a gas called ethylene. Another interesting thing is some farmers will pick their fruit before it's ripe, and they'll transport it when it's unripe. And then they'll spray synthetic ethylene gas all over the fruit to make it ripen. Because, like Ms. Luong said, the plant is actually making the ethylene. And so if you pick the fruit when it's unripe, the fruit will never ripen unless you have made synthetic ethylene to spray on there to ripen it. Well, it's not on the plant getting any more sugars, so this is why sometimes fruit is still sour, or it's like a mealy texture, because it's been ripened with synthetic ethylene.
The next hormone are cytokinins, which increase the rate of the cell's division.
And one thing that we do want to note is that cytokinins are really commonly found in the roots. The roots are where the majority of growth is going to happen once a plant is mature. So when a plant is immature, all of the plant is really going to be growing. But once the plant kind of reaches its mature height, the roots will actually continue to grow, constantly seeking out new sources of water. So we do want to know that the roots have a really high rate of cell division, but keep in mind what type of cell division would be going on there. We're making identical cells. So would that be mitosis or meiosis?
Okay. Our next hormone is auxin, and this actually helps the cells to elongate so that they can grow in response to the different stimulus that are in the environment.
And that in response part, you see, is pretty important.
So there's 3 types of responses. The first is the response to light, which is called phototropism.
And you can have negative phototropism or positive phototropism. So when we go back to this picture, positive phototropism is growth towards light. We call it the shoot of the plant. The shoot will grow up towards light and be positive phototropism. The roots actually grow away from light and show negative phototropism.
Okay. Then we have growth in response to gravity, and this is called gravitropism.
Again, positive and negative. Which part of the plant would grow towards gravity, and which part of the plant would grow away from gravity?
Then the last tropism is our growth in response to touch, which is called thigmotropism.
And the main example that you need to know about this one is vines. Vines are really going to grow in response to touch. They have an adaptation called tendrils. And tendrils are flexible stems. flexible stems that will actually be able to allow them to wrap around something. So when you see vines like honeysuckle or morning glories or even kudzu, they have these flexible stems that let them grow up and around something.
Then we want to talk about the plant's nutrition. And nutrition is provided by themselves because they're autotrophs and they go through photosynthesis.
So this would be a good time to stop and think about what is photosynthesis and can you define photosynthesis. It's really important for plants. So just a reminder, there are 3 reactants of photosynthesis. One is a gas, one is a liquid, and one is a type of energy. And those are the things that photosynthesis will use. And then we will produce 2 products. One is a carbohydrate and one is a gas. And so you should be able to fill these in. And this should not be a plus. This should be an arrow, sorry. This plus this yields or produces these 2 things. So take a second and practice that. One last thing is autotroph is a pretty important word. Auto actually means self, and troph means feeding. And so plants are self-feeding. Now, of course, we will eat the plants. Think about all the different plants that you eat. Even when you're eating like pizza, the crust of pizza is from a plant called wheat. And so you are constantly eating plants.
So most plants are going to begin their lives as seeds, and the embryo is dormant until conditions are optimum, so at their best, and then the juvenile plant will start to grow and develop into a mature plant. That's when you're going to start producing those roots, like Ms. Smeetsy said earlier, where they're expanding out, and then the stems and the leaves as well.
So we should stop for a second and make sure we're comfortable with the word dormant. Dormant is going to mean that it is not currently growing, but that it's still alive. So we need to be careful. A seed is actually a living thing. There's a tiny baby plant inside of that seed, but it's not growing because the conditions aren't optimum. So think if you're a plant, growing in the winter is not going to be a good thing. You're likely to freeze and your cells will burst. There's not as much sunlight, not as much warmth, and so growing in the winter is not good. So the plant will wait until conditions are optimum. It'll wait until there's enough sunlight, enough warmth, enough water. And so we do kind of want to add in what these conditions are. These conditions are water, temperature, and light. When the plant is able to sense, and they do actually sense, kind of like we see with our eyes, they have proteins that can sense when there's light, water, and warmth, and that's when they'll begin to grow. And we do have a special word for that, also starts with a G, it's called germination. So the seed will germinate and begin to grow into a full plant.
Okay. Then we have some plants that actually don't produce any seeds. That's going to be your mosses and ferns, and they actually produce spores instead of seeds, which can dry out.
And so this is an interesting look at the diversity of different plants. Some plants have adaptations to help them better survive, especially when they're looking at reproducing. And so we need to label these 4 parts of a seed because they're going to help seed plants survive better, which is why mosses are really small and ferns only live where it's really moist because they can dry out. Other plants can live in a variety of places, like even in the desert, because their seed helps them reproduce. So number 1 is the seed coat. It's that tough outer part. It can actually even be resistant to acid, which is why an animal can eat a seed and it'll actually pass right through you. So when you were little and somebody told you if you ate a watermelon seed, you'd grow a watermelon in your stomach. That's not true. The seed coat will protect the plant and will help it pass through your intestines. Number 2 is actually going to be, 2 and 3 are really the embryo, the root and the shoot. And this is the new baby plant. This is going to be a diploid. We're going to talk later about remembering pollen is plant sperm, and it's haploid. The egg and the sperm come together and form the new embryo. And then 4 is the food source. This is why you actually eat sunflower seeds, because comparably they have a lot more food in that seed than other seeds like a watermelon seed. There's not as much food inside that seed as there is in a sunflower seed. When you eat a sunflower seed, you actually break off the seed coat and you're eating the food source. Those sunflower seeds have been cooked and that kills the embryo. And so these are adaptations to help the plant better survive. And this is where we stop. What we've talked about so far is regulation, nutrition, and growth and development. And so if you'll write a little summary in that summary box about RNG, and then later we're going to talk about plant reproduction. And so we're stopping here.